Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 169th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss what they anticipate from the Biden administration. I expect that the subtopics will include such things as the economy, foreign relations, immigration, domestic tranquility, that's straight out of the preamble to the Constitution, national defense, taxes, COVID-19, and a variety of other subjects I suppose will come up. Our panel this morning begins with Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired senior research chemist, then Joe Gaines, former faculty member of the University of Akron and Wadsworth High, Patty Haskins, member of the Wadsworth City Council, and Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services. Ron, as a supporter of President-elect Biden, what do you expect will be the chief accomplishments of his administration?
John, I'm not a very good prognosticator. I have a list of things that I would hope for. About the only particular prediction I would make is that if and when the Republicans retain control of the Senate, that Mitch McConnell will continue his obstructionist techniques. But what I could hope for is that we'll get some of the statesmen that have been hiding for the last few years will come out of the woodwork, and we'll start discussing some things in terms of how they are better for the country and not better for the party. But that's a hope. There are certainly things going on. Perhaps when we get rid of the poisonous atmosphere that this pathological narcissist bully has generated, that some of that will start to happen. There are some good things to that. I mean, there's some things where the Republicans just ignored his ideas, particularly things with the health field. He was planning to cut back the funding on the National Institute of Health and the CDC for rather severely, but that didn't happen. I'd like to see, I'm hoping to see a better policy on immigration. I'd like to see a more humane and less immoral approach, particularly on the southern border, where we got to stop taking children away from their parents and guardians, that sort of thing. I'd like to see a good, solid path for citizenship for the dreamers, something that will be legal, that will be expeditious, and that won't be terribly expensive. It's costly to go for citizenship. I know that from having helped a former pastor who was Canadian get a green card. It's a tough thing to do. It takes a while. I'd like to see that happen. I'd like to see perhaps, I don't particularly want to call it amnesty, but at least try to set a situation so that the dreamers aren't afraid every year that they're going to lose their protection and get sent back to a country they never knew. I'd like to see more, not having in the cabinet and the head of agencies people that in private life have been opposed to the goals of those agencies and cabinet positions. That happened too much. I'd like to see some good positive things on the environment. There are some things there. The agreement to allow the Pebble Mine situation has not been approved. I'd like to see reversal of the going into the Tongass National Forest and make that a wilderness area for sure, and don't log it, that kind of thing. And particularly, and I'll just stop with this one, but I really want to see a concerted positive effort on fighting climate change. It has to start perhaps with, I don't know whether it's a carbon tax or whatever it is. We have to begin phasing out the use of fossil fuels one way or another. We have to, at the same time, try to do something about the economic impact that's going to have. We know that severe changes like the COVID-19 has created severe economic impact, and we'd have to figure out ways of getting around that. There are efforts worldwide about how to do that, and not only reaching carbon neutrality, where we're not where we're not putting any more in than what's already there, but ways of taking out what's there, ways of absorbing it. And there are worldwide efforts in going on in that case. Now, there's a whole bunch of a whole shopping list here. As you mentioned, some of them COVID-19, trade. We got to get back into some kind of a relationship in the Pacific Rim countries. We can't just ignore that. We'll be better off fighting China if we get in there with some of our allies. Tariff situation has really been a problem, particularly on things like aluminum, where we're kind of fighting our Canadian neighbors. I think world trade has got to be, well, I'm hoping that it will be a little more logical than it's been in the last few years. So there's a whole list of things, and we can get onto them. I'm sure we will over the coming year. And what I expect most from the Biden administration is hopefully a little more collegiality in the Congress and a little less partisanship. I don't know if that'll happen, but I would hope for it.
Okay. Joe, what's on your mind? Oh, Joe, you're muted.
How's that?
Okay.
Well, I
Yeah.
agree, like I always do, with the person that spoke before me. I worry that the Republican Party will do everything it can to hurt Biden. And by doing that, it hurts the Americans, us, our party, our system. And when I say that I'm afraid that they'll hurt us, I'm not anti-Republican by any means, but I am let's attack the opponent, and they look at us as the opponent, or the Democrats as the opponent, and he's not. He's the president of the United States. It was created under the belief that, you had the executive power, you had the judicial power, you had the legislative power. All of these have to work together. And are they working together? I think Biden can make them work together. He has in the past. I like to see more cooperation, not just between Democrats and Republicans in our own domestic problems here at the United States, but in foreign affairs, especially in Europe. I like to see us working together in the sense that when we keep saying, we used to use the term, not used to, but we used the term making America great again. Well, what made America great again was that we worked together with other nations. We were able to work with other nations, and we haven't in the past 4 years. We're looking at them as opponents. I don't think we need to do that. Immigration needs to be worked on, definitely. We need to not only allow immigration, but clean it up, fix it so that it works for everybody. National defense. Let me tell you, I'm going to use a word here, and I hope I'm understood. I think we're going to go through a Cold War with China, meaning that we're going to have to compete with them, not necessarily physically, but we're going to have to compete with them to get back on track for the United States and not allow China just to dominate and to control things. So I do look at it kind of almost like the old days of the old Cold War with the Soviet Union in some cases. Race relations, I think that comes from the heart of who Biden is. I think he's not going to have any problems with race relations. He already has done a good job in putting his cabinet together and getting different people, different races together and putting other people in office. I'm looking forward to Biden as president. I think he'll be smart. I think he'll do things that won't upset the American government or the American people as often as our past president did.
Patty, I'd like to hear from you.
Well, I have a lot of the same things on my list. I think first of all, President Biden will have to deal with the COVID situation. The vaccine is out there. They're hoping to have doses to frontline workers and people that live in nursing homes, but there are still a lot of people that will not be vaccinated by the time that Joe Biden becomes president. So he's going to have to deal with the distribution of that vaccine, and he's going to have to work quite a bit on that and making sure that there is a plan to continue the distribution of the vaccine. Along that same line, though, he's going to have to revitalize the plans that we have to deal with a pandemic in the future so that we're not caught flat-footed again with how to deal with this, and our supplies are built up and that we know how to deal with it so it doesn't get out of hand as it has done this time. I agree with Ron. I think that immigration is a big issue, and it has been for the last 4 years. But what they need to do first, I think, is to revive DACA in a form that it stays in place and that it leaves a pathway to citizenship. I think that we need to have a pathway to citizenship for all of the undocumented workers. And does that mean that we don't need to reform some of the immigration laws? No, we do need to reform some of those, but we need to work on that and get some serious work done on it so that we're not just talking about building a wall, but we're actually talking about immigration reform that works. As well as what Ron said, the hundreds of children that have been separated from their families, that we make a concerted effort to make sure that those children are reunited and are taken care of. Because to me, that is just a horrible situation that never should have existed in the first place, but we still have. Work needs to be done on the Affordable Care Act. It's still there. It's been dismantled in some ways, but we need to improve on that. This was one of the plans that Joe Biden had from the first time that he was on the debate stage, that we need to take the Affordable Care Act and improve on it to improve the healthcare situation that we have in this country. That has never been more obvious than with the situation of COVID and people that were caught without proper health care. Back to COVID, we need to deal with the economy of this country. Right now, we're still fighting in Congress about PPP proposals and unemployment grants and so forth. Our small businesses are suffering direly and are out of money, are going out of business. We need to deal with that for our economy to thrive. I know just in the last few days, there was a bipartisan agreement between Pelosi and Schumer and a few other Republicans about a $990-some billion plan. Something like as of this needs to get passed, really should be done now. My sense is that nothing is going to get done though till after the inauguration. And at that point, we need to do something to help the citizens. On the world stage, we need to work with our allies again. I think there's a lot of repairing of relationships that need to be done with our allies because so many of those relationships have become strained over the last 4 years. And we need to express and help our allies and allow them to work with us. We need to work on climate change. Now, whether this means going back to the Paris Accords or creating a new plan, but something needs to be done on this rather than just say we're not going to do anything on this matter. We also need to deal with our so-called enemies. We need to deal with the nuclear proliferation that could exist in Iran. I mean, we had an agreement, it was pulled out of, but unfortunately nothing was done to replace it. And since then, Iran has increased their nuclear capabilities. How are we going to deal with that? And that needs to be done carefully. I also think we need to look at our military. One big concern I've had recently is the fact that Trump has replaced so many of the leaders in the Pentagon recently with people that, in my mind, perhaps are not the most qualified to handle the job. They are those that are loyal to him and really don't have the experience that's necessary. Excellent leaders within the Pentagon were just recently removed. And this at a time when President Trump is announcing that he's going to, for example, decrease the number of troops in Afghanistan by half 5 days before the inauguration. We need to have leaders in the Pentagon that are well-schooled, skilled, and aware of what's going on a national and international level. We need to deal with trade, all of these things. The big problem for President Biden is going to be prioritizing, what do I do first?
Okay, well, I have a question for you, Patty, before I let
Yes.
you go. You mentioned the stimulus package, which has sort of been stalled.
Right.
However, there's still $750 billion worth of approved funds that haven't been allocated. Do you have any idea why that is?
No, I don't. And I've heard different amounts on that. I just saw a program yesterday and they were talking with some of the money that, well, what was said was that all the companies that had applied for it got it. And so this was just extra. Well, if it's just extra, we need it now. Let's continue to use that. And the idea has been, well, let's just put it back. I heard Marco Rubio speaking today saying we should just put this money back to deal with the deficit. I guess now all of a sudden the deficit is a problem again. But the other thing is Steve Mnuchin has come out and said we're going to take some monies that could be used for stimulus and PPP, and he's going to put it back to other uses. Why it isn't being used for what it should be used, I don't know.
Well, I heard that the Speaker of the House controls that money and its uses. But anyway, I'm not going to hammer on that. Bryan, I'm sure that you've got a lot of comments to make now.
Yeah, I'm just like a kid in a candy store. I mean, I just can't believe all these things that have gone by the wayside that need to be attacked. And my head is spinning with just the way the media has now framed the incoming administration. I suppose that he'll be able to part the Red Sea, walk on water, and heal the sick and lame. I'm amazed that the way things have been sort of couched in terms of, we need to mend relationships overseas. Does that mean that they're no longer going to have to pay their fair share? I think a lot of things that were done over the last 4 years they didn't have to be so acrimonious if we had all this love and unity and coalescing around the President of the United States, which everybody now is talking about. We have to bygones have to be bygones, have to put that all aside. There's a new day dawning. The sun will come up tomorrow. Everything's going to be fine. We just have to coalesce and here, be unified. We didn't see any of that over the last 4 years.
There's a reason for that. It didn't exist.
And the sad part about it is that as the media and the strident, progressives push the narrative that Donald Trump was a illegitimate president, I mean, you're going to see 4 years. It's probably going to be more like 2 years, because I'm predicting that the House flips in 2 years to a Republican majority, because a lot of the issues around COVID can be laid at the feet of Nancy Pelosi. And they made this into a very big political football. It didn't have to be a political football. It could have been, we got to put the people first, but there were things that she just had to, put in some of those bills that just, they weren't going to fly. So I'm hoping that this unity and coalescing will go both ways. And it won't just be, unity if you do it our way. And if you don't do it our way, then there's the door. I'm hoping that there can be actual compromise as to what will work best for the American people, not just here's our plan, AKA Barack Obama with healthcare. Not one Republican signed on to that thing. That's not compromise as far as I'm concerned. That's not coalescing as far as I'm concerned. That's not unity for what I'm, how I look at unity. I look at unity as people coming together and everybody, give something. Everybody has a pound of flesh they have to give to the problem. That's compromise. Compromise isn't you do it our way or it's not going to happen. So I'm hopeful that a new, Biden presidency will usher in this unity that he's talking about and this coalescing around the presidency that he's talking about that we have so sorely missed over the last 4 years because of a rabid press and a rabid group of people that just could not accept the fact that Donald Trump was elected president of the United States. And I'm hoping that the body politic will take a look at that and say, where do we stop with this notion that we just have to destroy the person moving forward? I hope that there's some immigration reform. I hope that there's some trade reform going on. I hope that some of the tariffs that we've laid on China, and I hope people start looking at China. Just the other day, Jake Tapper, seems to be the mouthpiece of the progressive left, mentioned that there was a trove of documents that proves that basically, the virus came out of Wuhan and that the Chinese were misrepresenting the numbers and all that kind of stuff. Lo and behold, we're starting to hear some of the truth come out about the situation that we find ourselves in. There is a distribution. I'm hopeful that this vaccine, I'm glad I don't live in the state of New York because Governor Cuomo has already told his people that they're not going to get this vaccine for months. Yeah. Now, our Governor DeWine has said that by the 15th, they're going to start inoculating our first line workers, those that have, comorbidities, first responders and all that kind of stuff. I'm glad that I live in the state of Ohio at this point in time that we're not politicizing this vaccine. There are now 3 companies, maybe 4, that have a vaccine that works. That's all about warp speed. You cannot ignore the fact that the Trump administration put together a team of people and they brought 4 vaccines to market in a year, in less than a year. That's unheard of. And the distribution system is in place. Joe Biden only has to show up and be inaugurated on January, whatever that is, 20th, and the distribution will already have taken place. A lot of the things that he talks about too, as far as, COVID and stuff, that's already in place. It's already been happening. It's just that it's not been getting any attention whatsoever. Yeah. I'm hoping that taxes don't go up because we've learned by sad experience that when you increase taxes, the economy suffers. And those people making under $400,000 suffer the most. The guy that makes $400,000 a year, if his taxes are increased, by 2 or 3 or 4 or 5%, he doesn't feel that. What the person underneath him feels it is because he doesn't hire that guy, that handyman to work at his house. He doesn't hire the people to help. This notion that somehow it doesn't trickle down, it does. And we found that you can show that time and time again, from an economic standpoint, that when you raise taxes, and no matter who you raise taxes on, it hurts everybody. I hope that Joe Biden uses some of his sense coming from the state of Delaware, which is a very corporate-friendly state, that he rejects the idea coming from Senator Warren and the AOCs of the world that somehow we need to forgive student debt, we need to forgive mortgages, we need to just do all this kind of stuff because it doesn't work. That doesn't work. So I'm hoping that Joe Biden brings a little more moderate Joe Biden to the table instead of the tack left Joe Biden that we saw during the campaign season, and that he uses his head. And I was surprised that he picked Janet Yellen. I thought that's a great pick for Secretary of the Treasury. She's the smartest bulb out there when it comes to this stuff. I don't care if she's a woman. I don't care. There's no preference for me. Pick the best person. Now, if you want to get stuck in that preference-based stuff and say, oh, he's doing all women, I just want the best women. I want the best man. I want the best black person. I want the best white person. You know, it doesn't make any difference to me. Janet Yellen is a good pick. She's a sound head. And if he continues to make picks like that, I think we're going to be in for, you know, a more predictable, you know, administration for Joe Biden. I just hope he doesn't go left with some of the wacky stuff that Senator Warren and AOC and some of these guys that are so far left in their party have proposed. You know, I just hope that Joe, you know, looks at the tea leaves and listens to his party and says, you know what, we got to get to the middle here. We've got to give some if we expect our folks on the other side of the aisle to give some. So that's the unity that I'm looking for. That's the coalescing that I'm looking for. That's the compromise that I'm looking for. I'm not looking for take it or leave it anymore.
Okay, you just answered go ahead, Patty.
I just have to respond to the fact that, you know, Brian, you're talking about unity and that we need to do it, and it hasn't been done for 4 years. I'm sorry, but President Trump has always been, it's my way or the highway. He doesn't know what the word compromise means. And I hopefully think that we are going to see that. I think the Democrats are willing to compromise. And, you know, Trump has been in the past. If you don't like me and don't do as I say, you're out of here. I mean,
I was hoping that we were going to talk about what Biden's going to do and not do another Trump dump.
well, no, and I wouldn't have, except that he brought this up. I mean,
Well,
really top of his hit list right now
The proof
our
will be in the
governor
pudding.
is
The proof will be in the
top of his
pudding
list right now is our governor,
if
because
this
he
happens.
didn't agree with him
Because
totally.
I just,
So,
listen, I've got a question to ask, and we've only got 3 minutes left. The subject of Biden's cabinet came up a few minutes ago.
yeah,
And anytime I hear any discussion about his cabinet, I hear about how diverse it is. My question is, why is diversity important? I mean, it seems to trump talent, that everything. I mean, why do we care about the identity of person in the cabinet rather than what they're capable of, what their history is?
Oh, we need to have them express their views, and their viewpoints are going to be maybe different. You know, you're talking about compromise. To have compromise, you've got to have answers to the questions. And there was no answers from the Republican Party. You know, we need to change the health care. Okay. To what? We
Do you really think that the Republicans were a friendly, loyal opposition during the last 4 years, or the Democrats were a loyal opposition over the last 4 years? It seems like the Democrats were just determined to impeach Trump from the day, in fact, before he was even inaugurated.
You know, what you're saying is not only true, but I heard it before, but I heard the words Obama before. They wanted to impeach Obama before he was even elected. I mean, I think it's been, you know, Republican
I don't remember that at all.
Oh, Republican Party really destroyed, did everything it could to hurt Obama from the very, very beginning.